hear, you can't hear anything.
Yeah, but
Almost nothing.
Derek was saying
And so this will,
hardly hear from home.
so when, like McCormick asked me what I
So
thought about
I
the
think this
zoning,
might be a
you know, the other day, oh,
Yeah.
just whatever. I mean, it's what. I had no idea what had been said. It was almost like, eh. So hopefully this will, help.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see things change when I don't even complain about it. They didn't really care what I thought about that discussion anyway. So.
Oh, there's Melinda. Oh, don't worry for me. No, I can read it. I think.
Can you?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
I need to
if
get
I
new
if I can't,
contacts.
I can see it. But if I can't see it, I've read this thing so many times. I know how to fit in the words. Whoa, it's 4 o'clock. Ready? Ready? Okay. Good evening, and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission administrative meeting. This meeting is called to order. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission administrative meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Doctor. Here. Your Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Fever.
here,
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Thank you. Report of the City Attorney, Doctor.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This is the time on the agenda where you have the discretion to close the meeting for an executive session. And I believe this would be the time that we would then talk about litigation strategy, and we would close it pursuant to 23203 subsection 4A, which allows us by law to do so.
Thank you. At this time, is there any public comments before we close the meeting on this topic? Madam Clerk, do we have any online?
Mr. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised or anything.
Okay, at this time, we'll close the meeting for litigation strategy. And we fully open?
Commissioner Reed, can you hear us okay?
Thumbs up.
Yes, I can. It's a little hard to hear you, Danae. I can hear the mayor quite clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's this voice you hear. All right, we'll get back to the open forum. Attorney Doctor, did you want to say something about a synopsis of the closed session? You have the floor.
Mayor, commissioners, thank you. We just discussed litigation strategy for the case RGB Investments, 80 Proof LLC, CAS Holdings LLC, and Maureen Blatter as trustee of the Family Trust versus City of Helena regarding street maintenance and improvement district funds, and close the meeting for that purpose.
Thank you. Commission questions, discussion. What say you, commissioners? Okay, I'm waiting for. We're just escaping that. Okay, we'll move along. Recommendations from Helena Citizens Council, HCC Representative Cole Rossland. Do we have a representative present?
He was here earlier.
Let me go see.
You bet. Okay, do you want to check online to see if he's available online? Sure, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, I do not see him online.
Okay, thank you. City managers report. Manager Burton.
Mayor, I don't have anything to report. I just want to, and I know you and I visited earlier. If we're not done at 5:30, I will have to leave, and Sheila Daniels will still be here. If the meeting goes that long.
We're praying,
Let's
doesn't
make sure it doesn't go that long.
There you
Sorry,
go.
that should-
He has an important party to get to.
Yes.
Okay, so commission discussion of budget amendments. I see we have a memorandum here with some amendments.
Yeah, Mayor, we did talk to the commission about making some time available at this meeting to see if there were any modifications or discussions that the commission wanted to have prior to the public hearing in the commission meeting. And so we've received some responses from Commissioner Dean and Commissioner Fever. I think that others may weigh in depending upon the discussion. But I thought to be efficient, we might just make this list available to the full commission and start at the top and finish at the bottom.
Roger
And the
that.
commission can, have discussions or fall out where you may.
Okay.
If that sounds like a good approach.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
We'll start with items from Commissioner Emily Dean.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
would it be possible to email me the document? I apologize. I did not know this was an in-person meeting, and I can't actually see that. So if someone could email it to me, I
Oh.
could at least look. That would be great.
you bet.
Commissioner Reed, I'll
Thank you.
race over and get that email right now.
Danae, sorry, this is Amanda in the manager's office, disembodied voice. I can go ahead and mail that over to Commissioner Reed.
Appreciate it, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Reed, let us know when you receive it, would you please?
Yes, in the meantime, please feel free to go ahead. I will. Catch up.
Okay. You want to say something?
Oh, do you want to talk about it? Is that one? Okay. So if we're starting at the top, I did have a brief conversation with the chief. The first item was an HPD safe storage education program. I was thinking a little bit about some of the ways that municipalities are able to help support safe gun storage. given that Montana and Helena has continued to experience some of the highest youth suicide rates in the country, along with obviously many of the other tragedies that we continue to see. This would be something, there's a lot of actually pretty good research that comes from the Government Accountability Office about programs regarding safe storage that have been fairly successful, including providing locks to those who might want them, and providing more opportunity for those. When I discussed it with the chief, we actually may not need any type of budget appropriation for that type of program, and an opportunity to work with the public information officer, Jake Garson, to play our role in improving safe youth in our community. Did I summarize that? Okay, Chief.
Yeah, Mayor, Mr. you did very well. I think one thing, we get locks right now from Project Child Safe. And I was gonna get you frequency and how many we got, but I know we just got a shipment in. There's over 100 sitting in our office now. But we've been doing some PSAs with PIO, the city PIO, person. And those have been going really well. Very talented at it. I think we start at that level, and then we see how that goes, and then maybe do a larger media outlet for it. I think if we start there, I think we can get a great service to the community overall.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
I think also that if this proposed legislation actually passes Congress, there's supposed to be funds in that for safe storage education. How much, I have no clue. But I know that that is part of what Congress is looking at right now.
Yeah.
Of which would, of course, it obligate the city to make a request, don't you think? I mean, go for some assistance there. I agree with you.
Yeah.
We need to lock these guns up as much as we can. That would be useful.
The second piece with HPD was a handle with care program. They have them around the state. The chief didn't believe that that would necessarily require an appropriation either, which I'm excited to hear. It is mostly a legal question, which a lot of communities around the state are frequently discussing. There are a number of counties that are successfully doing it and have been successfully doing it. Implementing handle with care program, and I think Helen is very fortunate that the pioneering program in the state was in Polson, with the Polson PD, I think Lake County, and the tribal police. And Rex Welch, who is our current superintendent, was a superintendent up there when that program got started. So I think that there's a really good resource there, and it sounds like it will be going to the city attorney's office to figure out what is possible for us moving forward. I'll be quick with the others. One of the other items, every morning we get reports from HPD, and almost always the vast majority of citations are around DUIs. And I think that probably everyone in the community has been touched by someone getting or some incident with someone who was driving under the influence within this community. We have the highest DUI rates in the country within Montana. And I think within the municipality, we should try to address the problem where we can. And so I would be interested in figuring out if we can develop some sort of pilot program to reduce DUIs through our transportation systems. I did not put dollar amounts on any of these yet, because I wanted an opportunity to, see what staff thought and what the commission thought in terms of priorities and what might be workable, given the resources and equipment that we already have. But maybe an opportunity to pilot a program that would provide transit or a contract for transit on weekends at night when we see, that spike in DUIs.
Commissioners, as you know, we recently switched models from fixed routes to our flexible transit service. And we're still seeing increasing ridership. That's also, I think, being also driven by the current gas prices because of the constant rising costs. We've always been looking at expanding services farther into the nights and into the weekends. We'll definitely take a look at this and see what the budget impacts, but just off the top, one part-time driver that drives 4 hours a day for a week for transit right now is running $35,000 a year. So we're getting pretty close to capacity. Doesn't mean that we can't increase the overtime hours or add more staff. It's just there would be some equipment. I don't think would be a big deal because we're not running at that time. So there would be more staff and trying to keep them because this one would run, probably 11 to 2 or 11 to 3 o'clock in the morning. And we don't want that same driver having to come in the next morning to drive even that Monday just to keep them on the schedule. So we can definitely look into the ramifications and get back to that.
A little time might allow us to look at any opportunity for strategic partners.
Yep.
Yeah. This as well.
Like the Tri-County Tavern Association or something like that. Yeah, I think that's excellent.
So, David, do we run those buses till 10 a.m., 10 p.m.?
No, those buses run until 6.
Okay, so it would be more than 11 to 2 thing, unless that's just when there's a high probability of somebody who needs a ride home. I mean, that's a deal.
Well, I think, Mayor and Commissioner, I think part of the goal of transit has always been to start expanding those services because we do get pretty consistent requests for after hours. So not necessarily this situation, but folks are over at a friend's house or whatever, or they don't get off work until 8 and they work a different shift at the hospital or for somewhere else. So we've always been looking at expanding those services. It's just that right now we're in the midst of this transition, which is going great. It's had great response from the public, and I think it's just possibly one of these next steps to start looking at expanding the hours and possibly days.
And I should note, Mr. Mayor, there is no taxi service in Helena anymore. And so in years past, you could use a Carol, for example. Carol paid a taxi service for what they called Arrive Alive. That does not exist anymore because we don't have a taxi service. And if you've ever tried to get an Uber in town, we don't have that many. And so at 2 in the morning when, there's 2 Ubers out and, 400 people needing to get home across town, it's a recipe for disaster that's already been happening when we have the DUI rates that we do. So
And one other thing I'd like to have in your commission is, that's talking to one driver. And right now with our flexible service, rides are pretty much guaranteed. It's scheduled 24 hours in advance. This situation would be maybe not a scheduled event. So that would, under our current policy, would come under availability. So if we were picking somebody up on one side of town, that may leave the other side of town. So it would have to be looked at strategically on how many buses we would have available, which as we increase it, just increases the cost, but it's basically within the coverage and hours.
My next one was electric boxes on the bulb outs at Hill Park and Women's Park. This came up a couple BID meetings ago. So it was my understanding it was folks that DHI, BID, the rest, property owners down there who utilize Hill Park and Women's Park for events, that there would be electric boxes on the bulb outs for the for bands and or the food trucks that are down there. I don't believe that those were put in and that it was going to get resolved. But I don't believe it has been resolved. So if we need an appropriation to resolve that, I think now would be the appropriate time to do that.
Mayor, Commission, looking at that, they weren't part of the plan. And I don't know if they were originally gonna be part of that, and there was an issue that came up. The engineer that was the project manager for the project left the city last week, so it's been kind of behind the eight ball to try and figure out what all happened there. But I will work with the BID to figure out if that's the appropriate place to be able to put the electric boxes, and then set up some sort of an agreement of who's gonna actually pay for electricity that's going to be there, how, if it's the city, how we get it reimbursed. But I will work with BID, and I have meetings with them, so
Okay,
we can get that set up to see what it would cost and the steps.
how does the cost work then for the electrical boxes on the walking mall?
Mayor, Commissioner, some of the walking mall, most of it goes through parks. Is that there's a meter that goes through and does that. However, on the 300 block, the meter actually goes to the BID itself. So that was an agreement we did when we did the trees on the 300 block, that we had an agreement, and they actually just get billed directly from Northwestern Energy. So there's a couple options that we can do, and I can work with Brad as far as parks and the BID and see which would be the best. It'd be better for us if we just let the BID handle it, and then they can deal with the cost of electricity.
Commissioner Reed, I see your hands up.
Oh, it's fine. After the other two go, I just put it up for when it comes around. It's fine.
Okay.
And the other piece for Public Works, we have a strategic plan for waste reduction that I know will be coming soon to the commission, and the draft has been published. And so one of the things that I think I've learned in my first 2 years is that unless you have an appropriation to go with the recommendation, they're in all of these expensive and fancy plans, they never get done. And so because we're already working on, what's happening. It's not a slight, it's just the reality. And so I'd be interested and that plan has not come to the commission, but the budget is right now. So I don't want us to be in a position where we have to wait another year to even consider, what recommendations we can start moving forward with. But I included a potential request for an appropriation to implement some of the recommendations within that waste reduction strategic plan.
Mayor, Commissioner, on that is, yes, we are having the strategic plan, and it'll come to the commission on July 6th for the next admin meeting to give an overview of what it's going to be. One thing is that not only the strategic plan, but we are now going with the integrated solid waste master plan, which the strategic plan is going to speak to the overall plan and use that as a benefit to see where we go forward. So we were looking at mainly public education and outreach as staff. And where we came up with is we have roughly 12,500 for public outreach and education in solid waste itself, plus another $25,000 that we can use in public works administration. We kind of used it and see where we're going to get there. First, we need to develop a plan of what it's going to work, and that's working with Jake Garson, and to be able to develop it. And then another part of that is we have the half FTE for the sustainability coordinator, and that is going to be the recycling coordinator. So it'll be sustainability and recycling. So between all of them, we thought that would be a very good start to get what we can do that isn't going to affect be affected by the solid waste plan itself, because there could be tons of changes with like recycling and going to universal recycling, just as throwing it out there, that we don't want to have the public outreach and education speak to something that we aren't going to deal and waste some of the money. So working with Jake, we've already started to do a recycling video that'll be out pretty soon. So we figured with between about the $40,000 and then half FTE that we will get a very good start for next year, and then start to implement it going down the road.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, I think that if we have an appropriation, okay, then that's great. I'm glad to hear that that can go towards that. And then the final piece, I know that the upgrading the ice rink didn't make it in the $1 million allocation of priorities. I will say that I think that given that we truly do lack a lot of outdoor activities for kids and families in the winter time, where we have lots to do in the summer, but not much to do in the winter. And we know that activity is directly correlated to children's overall well-being. And so I'm going to continue to advocate that we do upgrade the ice rink, which would, and I think that it could be done in 3 phases. The first of which I'd be interested to see what it would cost for us to pour a surface and include it in this budget at the ice rink. And then moving forward with the phase 2 of the chiller, maybe we can consider ARPA dollars or other opportunities for funding. But I do think at least getting that surface poured would give us an opportunity to use it in the summer for and non-snow seasons for roller derby, 3-on-3 basketball, the rest, because right now, if you walk back there, it's just a dirt pad that no one gets to use in the summer. Unless you are riding your bikes in there, which also doesn't help us in the winter time, because then you're going to have to fill holes in the rest that happen when you are spinning burleys on your bike in the summer. So
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So Mayor, we're well along in the budget process, and what comes next is the capital improvement plan review and the allocation of ARPA. There are some city projects that we're going to lay in front of the commission for your consideration. One is the SSD upgrade. The county and the city are proposing.
What's SSD?
Split. The Support Services Division, dispatch. That comes, the county has tentatively agreed to fund half of that at $750, and there'll be a similar request for your consideration. The air conditioning at the Civic Center is $500,000 short of the full funding of the project. That'll be for your consideration. And we can also put some dollars to this and put it in front of the commission. But we'll have a broader discussion in terms of how you want to construct what are the sideboards. And I know that there are other potential projects that Commissioner Fever has brought up as well. So, but we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fever, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Emily, our Commissioner Dean. Your ice rink is a good idea, even if it's not just going to be an ice rink, which makes it a better idea. And we'll see how this works out. For the commission's information, I wasn't looking at finding money in the budget to spend. I like this budget, and I'm going to support this budget. I am looking forward to our discussion about capital outlay and ARPA, and that's kind of my emphasis going forward. I'm very appreciative of the staff and you, city manager, for putting this budget together. And I want to reiterate, I'm glad we're paying people for working here, and I know that that is a key component to this budget, and I'm looking forward to that being the key component in future budgets as we go forward. I just had some questions, and it was interesting going back and looking at what was the facsimile of this meeting or something after this meeting last year. And the commission, I was not on that commission, adopted and passed some appropriations, and I don't know where they are. But I do know, since I'm on MTAC talking about sidewalks again, that the commission actually did appropriate $200,000 last year for sidewalks around either Broadwater or some other elementary school. And I'm reminded whenever I go to MTAC, where are the sidewalks?
Mayor, Commission, so you're correct.
Just pass. No, go ahead.
That was a commission amendment for a safe routes to school project to be brought up by the commission. The Broadwater School area was a recommendation from MTAC. That was the only, that came from MTAC, didn't have any public outreach, and the commission, we never really had a meeting to designate these funds. So currently, those funds are on hold.
So, and that's a good thing to know that they haven't just disappeared. So the money's in the budget, at least in the current year budget.
Yeah, I think too, that it fits within the broader discussion we had earlier.
Well, of course. I was thinking only of something else. All right. I get it. All right. Well, thank you David, very much. All right. We'll see where that goes. Kenrick Legion infield. And I was not quite certain what happened with the budget on this one, but I know last year the commission debated and appropriated, or thought it did, 125 grand for its half of what it presumed would be a $250,000 project, provided the Expedition League came to town. I think most folks would agree the Expedition League is not coming to town, and we wouldn't invite them anyway. So the 125 grand is sitting in the budget someplace.
Mayor, Commissioner Fever, the 125 for the Legion infield has been reassigned to bleacher replacement.
Oh,
And so it'll be carried over in fiscal year 23. And the step one of that process will be to contract an engineering firm to evaluate the current bleachers and see where we need to go as far as replacement.
now, I think that's a really good idea. One, to spend the money and do it at Kenrick Legion Field. So are these the seats under the old fashioned grandstand, so to speak, of the, or where?
Mayor, Commissioner Fever, yes, all of the bleachers would be evaluated and then look at what the cost of replacement would be and how far that 125,000 would get, how much work would get accomplished.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay.
Excuse me.
Really
one
quick,
minute.
just on that. So one question I have, and I was just having this conversation. I know East Helena will likely get a baseball team, and Helena Public Schools, both high schools, will likely be getting a baseball team, if not this summer, voting this summer, probably next year. What does that conversation look like? And I mean, how we obviously will have to have some sort of partnership for them to be using our facility, since we're the game in town. So I guess what does that look like? And I'm gonna guess we will need turf at that point, since the Legion baseball's always said if there's gonna be more, we can't keep up the infield with more than one.
I think they were negotiating with the Legion, but the Legion manages the field right now, so.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that's what will happen, right?
This year,
Mayor, Commissioner Dean, one of the tasks for this year will be to solicit proposals from each entity and see what can work at Legion Field. So right now that we don't have an answer to that question, but it is something that the Parks Department will be working on.
Okay.
And I would just say the Parks Department's already reached out, and all of the entities that you've mentioned want to participate.
Yeah, okay.
So my next was, has there been a study of the crossing the Centennial Trail over, in this case, in Montana, Posey? And if so, is there a report?
Mayor and Commissioner Fever, that process is ongoing process. We're expecting the final recommendation probably this winter with an estimate for construction. We'll see where the numbers fall. We are seeing a rise in material costs, so we'll have to see where the budget falls, but that we can bring that up once that study is, and that is the same for the crossing.
Well, just good to know the money's being put in. One of my concerns is that if we appropriate dollars and it just sits in our budget and isn't expended, that bothers me. I could never afford to do that. If we had the money, we spent the money. I think government needs to be very careful that it does not just sit on money. If you don't have the capacity to do it because of personnel or timing or supply chains or, frankly, the costs rise exponentially, I get that. So I'm looking forward to those reports when we get them done.
And just to add, we've already been, they know the projects are coming. We've already explained what the general projects are. So they didn't have any red flags at the beginning when we talked to them. So once we get that recommendation that both of these are on the jurisdictional roads, they will have to also do that process.
Good. Well, so not long after I submitted my, if you have questions more than anything else, about these flashing lights that Commissioner Dean proposed last year that he appropriated apparently 40 grand for, I noticed they appear to be there. They're just not wired yet. Is that the deal? Because what is that?
Mayor, Commissioner Fever, I don't believe they're installed yet. We're still working through the contract. We just got the lights in a few weeks ago. We're working through the contractor, so we'll install the
Okay,
foundations.
Then I'm just confused by what I saw there that's been recently installed on the streets on both sides of the railroad tracks, on both sides of the trail.
Yeah, Commissioners, there's signs indicating the crossing there.
I got that.
And we have done some work to that crash barrier on the railroad trestle. The lights haven't been installed, but they are at our yard.
Oh.
For the base before, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, and they'll be put up by some staff and put into use hopefully before the fiscal year.
I guess, since I've biked down Centennial Trail a lot, I still don't know why nobody's been killed on that road. In particular, when you're going from west to east and you can't really see the cars that are moving south on the interstate. You can't see them, and kids don't. Not to say that's all kids, but some kids don't look anyway, and the driver doesn't see them either. So I think this is a good idea. I'm glad that's going forward.
But for the longest time, the city wanted to improve that area, but it was, I think Rail Link didn't want to do anything with it. They stalled. So
Well,
anyway,
I'm getting to that one. The next has to do with the police department, the SRO program with the Helena School District. And I know that it's in the budget, but this commission, at least this commissioner, has not seen any MOU that pertains to that with the school district.
Mayor, Commissioner Fever, that is in the works. Anticipated within the next weeks, we should see an agreement back on this side. It is at the school district. I've actually talked to our Rick Williams, the chief of staff at the school district. I talked to him last Monday or the week before. We talked about the agreement. Just had an email from her and then again last night saying they're working out some of the insurance stuff and she'll send over the draft.
Well, I'm a big supporter of the SRO program, and for a whole lot of reasons without articulating them here tonight. But I will be much more comfortable if we have an actual agreement with the district over their obligation, our obligation, and we go forward jointly on that. Yeah. Then the Centennial redesign from Benton to Henderson, negotiations with BNSF. I kind of heard some noise as I walked into the room that there's something developing with BNSF. That would be great to know if they even responded to our letters. Just
Mayor,
asking.
Commissioner Fever, it has been a long time coming. We just received some language for the city attorney and staff to review. Hopefully move forward with an MOU to allow us to start moving the trail to the southern edge of MRL/PSS right away there to get obviously pedestrians a little farther away from the track and to improve the trail like it is in other spots, 10-foot wide trail, shoulders and possible amenities.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. There's lots of people that use that trail, and the crossing at Benton makes no sense. I mean, just confusing. So that'll be good to have that fixed up, but I'm sure BNSF would like to have us as far away as they can. Next has to do with the potential Veterans Memorial Rebuild. I went to the annual meeting of the Memorial Foundation, and by some great former soldiers that want to preserve the history of our veterans who have participated in foreign wars and who have just served in the various conflicts. Well, anyway, apparently it's in terrible repair, and they look at it as a entire rebuild. It's not something that you could just scrape away the paint and put on a new coating. It's going to be okay. They were talking, and you were there, the city manager, 30,000. Well, they don't have any money. Really. They like to sit on a little bit of cash for some purpose. I don't know exactly what it is, but they have a worry about it. So they have a kind of a fund of sorts, but they didn't want to expend that. Although maybe if we up the ante a little bit here, gave a little bit more. So the only amendment that I would seek, if it is even an amendment to the budget, would be to raise our proposed budget expenditure to 10,000. So it'd be a total of 20. And then, or better, ask the county to raise its contributions too. So each of us would contribute 15 grand. The last thing we want is that memorial to fall into disrepair. I just thought that's not acceptable. So that would be the only amendment, I guess, in terms of capital outlay that I know for sure that I'll be bringing forward going forward.
Mayor, Commissioner, to accomplish that, we would have to reduce another line item in the general fund or fund from reserves.
And Sheila is on the line there, but I think that within the parks capital, we have $10,000 to hire the company that would review the work and put together a scope of work. And that we would do that this year and then look at partnership funding on the actual project next year. That's the last discussion I had with Chris. Director Danielson, is that your understanding too?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commission. That is correct. We have $10,000 that is set aside for the feasibility and design for the project. The parks budget right now has, within the general fund, has been cut back quite a bit, and it would be difficult to increase appropriations without dipping into the general fund reserves. Or a potential other funding source might be the parks capital fund, but they've already designated capital out of that fund as well. But that would definitely be up to the commission to make that decision.
Well, let me not ask any more foolish question than I perhaps have already done several times. 10,000 out of the reserve, is that like forbidden?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, it's not forbidden. Just, I like to be very cautious about, dipping into our reserves that much. Right now, we're dipping into them in the general fund for over $1.2 million. Last year, we, used $4.3 million in reserves. And, we're depleting the general fund reserves fairly quickly.
Mayor, Commissioner, I think where I was sold on this, because I was in that meeting and heard the same conversation, is that it will take time and expertise to actually look at what needs to happen relative to designing the scope when the actual work takes place. And I think through the summer and fall, we would be able to do that. And then we would know what the project is and have good cost estimates for consideration in next year's budget. I don't think we're going to actually be able to do the project this summer.
Well, I'm pleased to know that things are in the works. So, and Sheila, I don't want to deplete your reserves with a 10 grand proposition that may be premature at this moment in time, but it might not be premature at this time next year. So as you start looking at the fiscal year 24 budget, or however capital outlay purposes. I think this is a small amount and it's a priority, at least with this commissioner. In terms of ARPA, I haven't made up my mind where I would be on how we would spend ARPA money. I know that we're going to have lots of discussions on this. I am looking forward to the trust fund committee's recommendations because they've been meeting. You know, presumptively, they've looked in some detail and scope as to how those monies might be expended in some fashion or another. I'm very much looking forward to that. But in this regard, I think you can't talk about ARPA and the Helena Housing Trust Fund without talking about our Redeemer Lutheran property. And I'm looking forward to that moment when RMDC, YWCA, and the Habitat for Humanity come before this commission and outline their projects. And then I think we have to decide what we're doing with ARPA money and the Helena Housing Trust Fund. Are we buying property? Are we just installing infrastructure? Are we, what are we doing? I think that'll be a large part of our conversation. In fact, I guess I'm saying, I don't know that we can separate the Housing Trust Fund from ARPA just clean and simple. I think that there is some interrelationship between those two funding sources. But speaking of the Helena Housing Trust Fund, I don't want to spend all the money and not have it be there in perpetuity. I'd like to almost see it as an endowment, but it's not big enough to live off the interest earnings right now. And so any investments we would make, I'd like to see them come back to us in some fashion. I think that's the purpose, but I'd also like to renew the revenue stream. Well, right now we have a revenue stream of sorts. The city puts, I think, 125 in on an annual basis. I think that's in our budget now. I'd like to take the marijuana tax and dedicate it all to the Helena Housing Trust Fund. And that will be something that I would work forward on. And then for a lot of reasons, but number one, I think that's just a good revenue stream. Nobody anticipated particularly. And we don't need to necessarily quibble a long time over how we expend that fund. We can certainly do that. But my recommendation will be going forward at some point in time that we dedicate the marijuana tax receipts, such as they are to this city, to the Helena Housing Trust Fund in perpetuity, so far as I'm able to get that kind of motion passed, if ever.
Go ahead.
Mayor, I just very first preliminary estimates on the dollars the city will receive, I received today. And I think they're very preliminary. But as soon as the Department of Revenue and the county, and we all land on here's the volume, all of that, because we don't have that allocated, that revenue allocated in this budget, then we'll come back at a later time and say, here are the revenue estimates. And as a part of that, do you want to dedicate it to the Housing Trust Fund, or do you want to fill other voids within the general fund? And just have a general policy discussion on the fact that it's there. Here's how much money it is, and how you want us to stage it up in the budget, whatever options you have. So that would be a future discussion, Commissioner.
Well, I'm looking forward to that future discussion. I'm not sure when that tax begins to, when that revenue stream actually flows. I mean, when does the spigot get turned on? But the money will start coming, and you'll have to put it in a pot someplace, and then we decide what to do with it.
I can't remember that date either. There, Commissioner.
The last thing is, and we've received a lot of information about the need for a new firehouse. Huge reports, excellent outline of the issue. The city invested quite a bit in that report. The fire department supports it. I think a third firehouse makes sense, right where mostly in that general area that they were discussing. That may not be ARPA money, that may not be anything money, I don't know, but I believe we need to talk about how we would build that firehouse, and if that's some sort of bond issue of sorts or not. I think it's time to put that discussion on the table. And we got quite a full report on that about 2 months ago, or maybe it wasn't that long ago. And we didn't act on it in any way, but I think we're going to have to.
You're right, and Commissioner Fever, you're gonna see on the next administrative agenda, an item with the fire chief, making a recommendation to the commission on establishing a committee to review the strategic plan and come back to the full governing body on recommendations. In addition to that, at a point where you reviewed all the capital plans, you put parameters around how you're going to allocate ARPA, then as a governing body, you're going to also have an understanding of what did not get funded. And if this, water rates and those type of rates will not increase this year, do you consider that next year based upon your understanding of need? Do you bond for fire improvements based upon your understanding of need? And so that should just lead us right in to the next policy level discussion on what are the rates, what do we bond, what are the priorities in terms of what didn't get ARPA money or capital money in this budget is kind of the broad plan.
And Mr. Mayor, I think it's just worth noting, not that everyone in this room doesn't know this, but for the public who might be listening, that we haven't raised any rates in the last 3. This is the 3rd budget cycle that we have not raised any rates at all.
Okay, I misspoke. I have one more item. It was actually an additional email that I sent to Danae, and it didn't make it on the list that you see. But that's simply to reopen discussions with the county, and if not the county, with ourselves on an open bond issue, open lands bond issue. I think the money is probably pretty much drained. If it isn't, it will be. The county has done the right thing here recently with that easement that it approved. They're right along the Missouri River, so we don't have to look at any more houses and condos as we drive down the interstate or the frontage road in a very beautiful spot of Montana with a historic view, a culturally important view. Well, anyway, I think it's time. It's been like, what, 2008, I think was the last time. That's a bad memory recall on my part. But to consider the extraordinary improvements and enhancements that the open bond issues that we passed have made in this city. I mean, it's phenomenal. And so we need to be having those discussions with the county.
Mayor and Commissioners, if you want to begin those discussions, we can add that as an agenda item on the next joint city county meeting. I start talking about.
I'd be pleased if we would do that.
Yeah, we're hosting that, so I
One,
think we are in July, first week in July. Go ahead,
yeah, I
Commissioner.
think one thing that I think that might be a little bit premature until we have an update on the discussion about the Parks District, because that would change how we fund open lands improvements. And I don't know if it is going to be updated in the final budget we see, but within the parks work plan that's in this one, it is using money and personnel to work on the Parks District plan, executing whatever the plan looks like with the county. I believe it's in discussions with the City County Parks Board at the moment. I don't know what the update is, but I think that maybe might be an opportunity at the next city county building to get an update on what is the conversation, because from what I had understood, Jefferson County was actually interested in, what this could look like too. So that I think it might be better
Well, I
to
have no
get that
problem with
first. and
involving
then-
Jefferson County if they want to actually jump into the conversation, because frankly, our whole South Hills is Jefferson County.
Yeah, so I
And-
think that maybe might be a good first step. And then, if that kind of stuff stalls out, then maybe that's the time to talk about what are our alternatives.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I'll be very brief, I
go
promise,
ahead. No,
since I have nothing on this memo, but while we're future casting, I might add something that I think is probably one of the greatest, in my opinion, just as an individual commissioner, one of the greatest unmet needs that we have out there. And that is in our police department. I think they've struggled for a number of years in their staff trying to keep up with the demand. And that situation's not getting any better. Now, I understand that there's a staffing study budgeted and maybe even underway, but I think, you know, I think we all understand there's a great deal of need. And in my opinion, the one that rises to the top that we really need to think about is where our police department is relative to the community that it serves. And so I'll always be, or henceforth, be reminding us of that because I think they need some help. So, thank you.
So,
Commissioner Reed had something.
yes, at this time, Commissioner Reed, I know your hand is still up. Man, you must have gained some muscles there.
You know me, I love a challenge. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a point I had sent a question in, but it also did not make it on. In looking at the budget, I'm grateful to the staff for putting together a balanced budget. I know that was a lot of work. I have appreciated the presentations and all of the information. So my thoughts on the budget were to be big picture versus little picture. I have heard some comments from my fellow commissioners that I would be supportive of going forward. The question I had submitted was how much money has been transferred from the general fund to the golf course restaurant in the past 5 years. And the response I received was that the first transfer was in 2020, and that was 280,000. In 21, we transferred 240,000. In 22, we transferred 235,000. And the proposal for 23 is 142,850, which will bring the total funds transferred from the general fund to the golf course restaurant to $897,850. And in listening to discussions about needs versus wants and things like the Housing Trust Fund and other issues, I'm struck by that amount. And struck again by needs versus wants. So I will be proposing an amendment to have the golf course fund cover the debt service within that fund and to have that general fund amount transferred to the Housing Trust Fund. I think contributing the minimum amount each year sets a precedent that I'm not sure we want to go forward with. I appreciated Commissioner Fever's thoughts on the marijuana tax, but I think we're a ways off from having that revenue stream and knowing what that looks like. And I think it is important, given what's going on in our community, that we prioritize housing and do more than contribute the bare minimum. So in an effort not to add more things to a balanced budget, I looked for places where we might find those funds. I think I would also be supportive of some conversations about the waste reduction plan. It's very hard to hear, so I couldn't really hear the answer about that and where we are in that process. But I will look forward to what sounds like some more thoughts, or I can follow up on what exactly we're doing to address some of those issues. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. City Manager, do you have anything else?
Mayor, from a staff perspective, I don't. I mean, we can certainly help Commissioner Reed draft the amendment that she just talked about for consideration at the next Monday night commission meeting. And if there's any other commissioners who want a formal draft amendment, we'll certainly work with you to do that.
Okay.
This, I think, covers, and we asked for questions and modifications and a discussion with the commissioners. I think that concludes what we've received from the governing body. And so we will be teeing up the public hearing a week from Monday and go from there.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question on Commissioner Reed's proposed amendment regarding the golf course? Did we switch it? Did it use? I believe that there was some debt service that we had in one fund that we moved to another, and I thought it was for this, but I can't recall if that's the right debt service. Sheila, yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Director Danielson.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. and Commissioner Dean, the debt service is still being paid out of the golf course fund. We had thought about, moving it over to the general obligation debt service fund, but currently it's still sitting in the golf fund. So the golf fund is still paying the debt service, but the general fund is proposing to cover that full debt service for the Muni's restaurant. We're not covering the other debt service from the golf source. I think there was an irrigation bond that we did. We're not covering that, but the proposal is to cover the geo bond for the Muni's restaurant.
Thank you. At this time, is there anybody from the public wishes to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Mark Judeman. I'm on the Citizen Conservation Board. I'm vice chair of that group, as well as the chair for the Energy and Transportation Committee. I'll try very quickly to address just a few things in the letter that we sent to the mayor and commission dated May 31st regarding our recommendations. There were several things that we couldn't see that were actually included in the budget, which we think are important. And so we want to bring those up for your consideration. For instance, under the general fund, in the past, there's been $30,000 per year that's gone towards an interlocal group with other city governments. This is to pay for a consultant helping to develop a green tariff proposal. And we had proposed that we would support $20,000 in fiscal year 2023 towards that end. Perhaps that's in the budget, but I couldn't find it. So I wanted to bring that up. Another thing that has been under development for a number of years, I think, when we had a sustainability coordinator, was the creating an energy savings performance contract to help address the city energy usage. And this would address the 100% clean energy by 2030 goal, which the commission has set. That is a community-wide goal, not just the city, but this would address certainly the city's portion of that. The way an energy savings performance contract works is that the cost of the contract is paid out of the savings that are realized through energy saving improvements. To do one of these contracts, one of the first steps is an investment grade audit needs to be done of all the city facilities. That cost is probably around $200,000, and that would be covered by the contract if the contract is sustained. However, if there is not a contract, then that would need to be paid for. So having a reserve of funds, again, in the amount of approximately $200,000 in the budget would be helpful to start that process. And then I think those are the major things that we want to go forward, highlights out of that letter that may not be currently used.
Thank you, Mr. Judeman. Madam Clerk, do we have the HCC representative? Well, you sit in the corner, I almost left you out.
That's okay.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. The HCC does not have much to report, only that we are eager to hear how our recommendations are received. We plan on doing so by attending meetings such as this, as well as extending an invitation to Finance Director Sheila Danielson at the end of this month, and we'll just continue to be in conversations. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Madam Clerk, do we have any other public comments?
Mr. Mayor, I have no hands raised online. I have nobody.
Man, you had your time. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I believe in the budget, there's $60,000 for the revolving clean energy loan fund. And I just want to confirm that that's the case, because we highly support that as well. That's very important.
Director Danielson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to let you know that that particular fund is not being funded for $60,000 for fiscal 23. Although we felt like the cash balances in the fund could support any requests in fiscal 23 without having to transfer an additional 60,000 in fiscal 23, and we could reevaluate that for fiscal 24.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on the point, Director Janice, would it be possible for us to get, I know around this time last year, we got an update as to how it's used, and I'm wondering if maybe we can get that sometime in the near future.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner and Mayor. We will work on getting you that information.
Okay, it's 5:29.
We did it.
Not yet. We're not done yet. I'm waiting at 5:30. So is there any final comment?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say thanks to all the staff and the city manager. I know that this has been, it was a big lift. It's a big lift every year, but I think this year it was a particularly big lift. And I think the whole commission, I can safely say that we're all very, very appreciative.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just quickly echo that. Thank you all very much. This has been the best that I've participated in, so thanks a lot.
Okay. Any final comments? Going once, going twice? So 5:30. Jeez.
Wow.
Okay, we got 1 minute according to the attorney. You know, these are attorneys.